I'd rather you didn't.
Alright,
How much, yeah,
you know what? I'm good.
I'm,
I got a little bit down.
and that request, I don't know if you heard on Zoom, someone requested the lights to be turned down, and I said I prefer not to. So I'm gonna start there. And before you guys even showed up, they were here on Zoom, so I said, I wanna give some meditation instructions that are pertinent to this type of meditation, which is a mix of Zen and Theravada Buddhism. I'm not in any way discounting other meditative practices, nor am I saying that this is something you should replace your other meditative practices with. So the reason I don't want to turn the lights down, now, do you have a physical issue like your eyes? Are you sensitive?
No, it's just, a little bright, yeah.
Okay. The reason I don't want to turn the lights down is because I don't want to create a certain atmospheric condition to base the meditative experience on. And I'm not saying that's what you wanted, and I'm not saying that's what that would have done, but meditation's not just when we sit on the cushion and we create conditions conducive for it. What we're doing when we're meditating is really training the mind and training a skill set to be able to take off the cushion into our daily lives, where we have to be able to cultivate the same result under conditions not conducive for it, where we have no control over the setting. And it might seem not so important. For me, I find it vitally important because I've seen and experienced with working with people and students over and over how orchestrating the experience becomes dependent on that orchestration. So let me talk about posture now, or let me talk about eyes open, closed first, since we have the light. In Zen meditation, we tend to keep the eyes not fully open, but slightly open, focused on a spot maybe 10, 12 inches in front of us. The reason is twofold. One is because it's very easy to close the eyes and get lost in thinking and imaginative experience. The other is the body is trained to get sleepy when we close the eyes. So if you prefer your eyes closed, do that. But if you get sleepy, maybe open them. There's nothing wrong with opening them. I think this also promotes training for taking it off the cushion. We can't shut out the outside world. That's not what meditation's about. It's not about creating an alternative experience. It's about grounding ourselves in what is as it is in the moment, to be present with what's present. Often what's present is not pleasant, is not comfortable. So practice is not about changing uncomfortability to comfortability or what's unpleasant to pleasant. It's about finding a different way to respond to that and find a way to find equanimity or balance within ourselves when outside us maybe isn't. And even when what's outside us is threatening or very difficult. So the more stimulus that we can be present for without grasping or attaching to, promotes our skill set in developing a non-attached awareness, where we can engage things without being emotionally or mentally swept away. So does that make sense? So another thing is the posture. I'm a meditation teacher that says, not that posture doesn't matter, but posture is yet another thing that can never be completely pleasant. It's going to be pleasant one moment, unpleasant the next, neutral, and as the conditions of our physical change, the posture will change in terms of how we experience it. That said, so it's really about what we're doing in relation to the mind in our posture as opposed to the posture itself. But that being said, posture, if we're going to find a posture, it should be something that's supportive to our practice. So the general posture is to have our hips higher than our knees. So if your knees cannot touch the ground, that's okay, but if that's uncomfortable or painful, maybe get a cushion to put under. So we come in here with physical limits and challenges that if you are in pain, the teachings would say, don't stay in pain, but don't immediately tap out to pain. Maybe train the mind to respond a little differently, that we don't immediately resist and push it away when it's happening. Now, maybe that's just a few seconds, or it could be another 30 seconds. But what that shows us is how much our mind affects our whole experience. When we can settle the mind and not have a reaction, we see that what we thought was extremely painful might be painful, but it's manageable. And then that's a metaphor for our lives. If we have a knee-jerk reactive reaction to something very difficult, it tends to escalate our perspective of the difficulty. But if we can not get attached, not react, settle ourselves, investigate, contemplate, change our response, we see that what we were deeming impossible is suddenly very possible. And we see how our mind dictates that. So I'll end with this before we sit for a brief period. The first foundation of mindfulness is a physical investigation. There's 4 foundations. I'm just going to give instructions on the first one. We want to experience what's happening physically without attaching to it. So the first thing we do to stay present is we bring our attention to our own breath. The reason is the breath, breathing, is the most consistent, present moment thing happening, regardless of whether we want it to or not. Same with the heartbeat. We can control our breathing, but we can't stop our breathing, or we eventually are in have trouble. So we breathe naturally, we bring our attention to the breath. You can use counting or just the sensations. We have what's called sense doors: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. When they make contact with the physical experience, whether it's an external one or an internal one, we want to experience the process, not the content. So what does that mean? It means we're aware of hearing, we're aware of seeing, we're aware of smells and tastes and touch and sensations, but we don't give it content, meaning we don't think about it, we don't create a narrative about it. So if I'm sitting in meditation and I hear something, what I'd want to do is note hearing and come back to the breath. A lot of times we're not quick enough to do that. So the next thing would be to note siren and then come back to the breath. What we don't want to happen is I hear a siren and immediately I'm thinking about a past memory that's associated with sadness or tragedy or whatever, or tap into a future fear. So we don't want seeing or hearing or smelling or tasting to trigger a reactive attachment where it sends the mind into a narrative about. And when we start to be able to manage that, we start to see how much of the life we live is based on what we think about it, not the true experience of it. And it sounds crazy, and I'm not being dismissive of using the mind to critically think, to contemplate, to investigate, to discern. But most of the time, the mind is controlling us with just random trains of thought that really are maybe a trauma or hurt reaction to a trigger, or an ego-based reaction where we're angry, resentful, being selfish, or being whatever. Does that make sense? So if you feel pain in your knee, don't label it pain. Label it throbbing, pulsing, hot, tight. Sit with it. Resistance is what causes us problems. How do you get in a cold shower or a cold plunge? You don't tippy-toe in. You got to get right in. So when we resist and push away uncomfortability, we never deal with it. We have to engage it, and we have to engage it fully. So engage uncomfortability, but then see how suddenly you were engaged in throbbing in your knee, and now suddenly it's gone. But now your back throbs. And then that's suddenly gone, and suddenly, for a brief moment, you feel very pleasant, and then that's fucking gone. The purpose of the first foundation of mindfulness is to realize we are not this body in any fixed, permanent way. We realize that everybody's body is the same. We are the same skin, bone, muscle, tendon, ligament, sinew, pus, bile. The body's a fucking repulsive thing. And it will grow old, it will go sick, and it will die. Those are the first foundational teachings. They are not negative teachings. Quite the contrary. They are teachings that lift us up to realize the temporality of our existence. And that makes it rare and precious and gives us the intention to cherish it and value it and take care of it. So the last thing, I know I said I'll end with something, but as you know, I don't end with things so quickly. The last thing I want to say is you're not meditating to create an experience, and you're not meditating to change your whatever experience comes up. Experience what's happening. Stay with it. Don't try to run away, avoid, or change it. There is no such thing as bad meditation. What we probably would deem bad meditation is just the human experience that we need to learn how to manage. Bad meditation is good meditation if you are present for how bad it is and stay with how bad it is. That's the purpose. There's not a goal of pleasure. There's not a goal of enlightenment. We can talk about that kind of stuff later. So if there's no questions, we'll begin. I spoke a lot, so we'll sit 15 minutes. For some of you, 15 minutes might seem like a fucking lifetime if you're present. Or it'll go by like that if you're daydreaming. or changing the experience.